Hey everybody, welcome to House Calls, the podcast.
Wait, go start
House
over.
Paws,
Start
Paw Patrol.
Paw Patrol.
We had an Instagram reel where it was a highlight of one of ours where literally I mispronounced 3 words. It was horrible.
All right, start it all over.
No, this is
Yeah.
good.
All right,
Let's
all right.
go.
All right.
So I was thinking about this because tonight we're going to be talking a little bit about financial wellness.
Yep.
And I was thinking about, well, part of it is financial wellness is spend less money. So this weekend, I was watching the Raven, DeAndre Hopkins. You know how they do the whole walk in the stadium
Yep.
and some people really, really dress up for it. In reality, most of the Ravens just wear like sweatshirts and t-shirts and stuff. But DeAndre Hopkins was all dressed up in a cool outfit that he got from the Goodwill. So he like filmed the whole thing going to the Goodwill to basically be like, I can look good without a lot of money.
There you go.
I mean,
Okay.
obviously this guy
That's always been your motto. But yeah, that's good.
So I started thinking about this. Does this ever happen to you? Like I told Ann the other day that I liked her jeans and she was like, I got them from Target for $25.
Yes.
Does that ever happen to you? I'm like,
Yes.
how in the world can you buy something like the denim itself must cost more than $25? Right?
I guess. I don't know. I don't know.
I have a funny story about that.
Okay.
So 21 years ago, probably, at work, one of our former guests, Amy Faranek, was my physician assistant, and she was probably 23 years old. And in between patients or something, she's like buying jeans or telling somebody that she's buying jeans. And I'm like, that's crazy. Like, how many pairs of jeans do you need? So I am literally probably mid-30s at this time, but still like the grumpy old man, like, come on, kids, who needs more than 3 pairs of jeans? So she's like, how many pairs of jeans does your wife have? And I'm like, I have no idea how many pairs of jeans. Probably 3 jeans. She probably has her like dress up jeans, her, Saturday jeans, and a pair of maternity jeans. There's no way she has more than 3 jeans, right?
Okay.
She goes, go home and check. And I'm like, fine, I will, but there's no way there's more than 3 or 4. So I go in and I look in our closet and I start counting the jeans. And I come back the next day and she's like, how many pairs of jeans there were? 34 pairs of jeans.
She's from Texas. It's okay. Oh my God.
But I just had no idea.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I don't know. Actually, I own 1 pair of jeans right now.
What? You're a khaki guy.
I always have been, always will be.
Are you a corduroy guy?
What's that?
Corduroy guy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So the other thing is, did you watch the Billy Joel special?
I did.
Okay.
You know what's crazy about that? How many hits? I mean, it's from like Piano Man was like in the early 70s and he was all the way through the 90s. I mean, that's crazy prolific.
Yeah. So many hits and so many songs that you're like, oh yeah, I forgot he did that.
Totally.
But the reason I'm bringing it up is because he had mid-career, he had a huge financial basically meltdown. He hired his former brother-in-law to be his manager and it seemed like they were friends. And you hear about this a lot with celebrities, or I guess could happen to anybody. You hear it a lot with athletes.
Yep.
And I always wonder, is that person, they always accuse the manager of stealing. I'm like, is the manager evil and stealing, or is he incompetent? And like, when you watch the documentary, you're like, Billy Joel is talented, but he knows nothing about the music industry. Right. He knows nothing about the financial world. Right. And he's like, I'm going to learn about the music industry. Hey, my buddy who seems pretty smart is going to do the financial world. Without any training, Right. And so you wonder how much of it was just not keeping up with records, not paying taxes, making mistakes. And fortunately for Billy Joel, he can keep putting out albums. But like for some of these professional athletes, if you lose all your money and you don't have any gas left in the tank, you're bumming.
Oh yeah, big time. But the Billy Joel thing, it's not a spoiler alert because of the documentary, but that's the reason he started doing those tours with Elton John, because he needed to build up his bankroll again. And it's sad, right? At least like with the NBA and NFL, they have like symposiums for rookies. Say, hey, this is how watch out for this, watch out for that, and they all have to get certified people and things like that. But yeah, there's a lot of sharks out there, a lot of bad people out there that are looking just to take advantage of somebody.
I feel like Billy Joel seemed like a great guy, super talented, but had a troubled life. And I feel like if he had a podcast, like House Calls the podcast, that he could have listened to at the beginning of his career, first of all, I think he would exercise a little bit more. But I mean, think how healthy he would have been.
Wait a second. He got Christy Brinkley.
and then he blew it. She seemed like
She was
so
in.
sweet
I
in the
know.
podcast. I
I
thought she
know.
was hilarious,
I know.
you know?
We should Ty, do we know her? We gotta get her on. Are you related to her? Because 'Cause you've been related
No,
to 90% of
I'm
our guests.
I know I'm not related to her.
You know
Yes.
what? I want you to I think we should do the
You know who I am
23andMe.
related to though, is I am related to Kate Upton, like, literally, I've obviously never met her before, but we have a common ancestor who's the same.
So many comments. So many comments.
And I think
Oh
Ed
my god.
Norton, the actor, was on that list of people who are related to that person. It's
Alright.
nobody you would know.
No, no.
Yeah.
It's almost like the pillars of, like, health that we keep talking about. There's mental health, emotional health, physical health, and financial health, and, tonight's guest, Gay Truscott, is gonna kinda walk us through that and make sure we're healthy in all aspects of our life. So, let's hear it from Gay and, see what she has to say.
I'm excited. This is gonna be great.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to an all new edition of House Calls, the podcast. Today, Ty and I are talking to our friend Gay Truscott. And, one of the things about our podcast that Ty and I keep, or maybe I harp on more than Ty does, is like, we don't have like a hook. Like, we don't have like basically what people keep coming back to us for, because like our conversations, they go all over the place. But I would say though, if we did have one focus, it's on wellness. And we've talked about physical wellness, emotional wellness, mental wellness, and Gay's here to help us figure out financial wellness, which is equally important along the way. And the great thing about this is that, Ty, you're a doctor, but you can't add anything in from your practice, but I'm sure we're going to be hearing stories about your lemonade stand when you were in 1981 and how you and Eric didn't split the money evenly.
We sold golf balls
There we
was
go.
our main
Knew it.
that's how I started my financial career,
Mhm.
but instead of talking about me and my financial expertise, let's talk to Gay.
That's probably a good idea. So, Gay, welcome, and thanks for joining
Thank
us.
you. Thank
This
you.
is
Thank
great.
you. It's a pleasure. I've enjoyed listening to your podcasts and as you said, uh, you know, learning about physical, health and well-being, mental health and well-being. And so I think a really important add-on to that is financial health
Yeah.
and
Well,
well-being.
we're not big braggarts, but we are basically the fastest growing podcast in America. And we are the one stop shop for basically everything you need to know to live a perfect life. So I'm glad you're on board. But
So Gay has joined the walking challenge, and long before Brian Klepper used those big,
oh,
huge
yeah,
weights, Gay was out there with her heavy hands. So
that's
she has
right.
been a big supporter of fitness and wellness. But let's get into the financial and a little bit about your background.
Great. Great. Thank you. So I've been in the financial world my entire career. My gosh, going on 40 years. Crazy. Um, I started in the banking industry post college, moved to New York City, worked for Chase Manhattan Bank in the roaring 80s as a financial analyst and had the opportunity to travel all over the world, which was incredible. And then I came back to my hometown of DC and worked in what I'll call sort of the private investment, private equity world
Hmm.
for a company called Allied Capital in DC. And great company, great, experience. Um, Unfortunately, it did not survive the financial crisis of '08 and '09. So I had to remake myself kind of in a mid-career position. It was a scary time. But I decided that I wanted to keep my financial experience, but put it to work for sort of personal good. And so becoming a financial analyst, a financial advisor and a certified financial planner was the path that I chose. So I went back to school in my late 40s, got my CFP certification at Georgetown. Took a year. It's a
Wow.
long time. Um, and then went to work for an independent advisory, wealth management firm in Bethesda. We provide, investment management and financial planning services to individuals and families primarily.
So, back to the Chase Manhattan days. I'm curious, what was it like for women at that time? I mean, were there a lot of women? And I'm asking as a dad of a daughter who'd like to follow that path at some point.
Oh my gosh, that is a great question. You know, it never occurred to me that there was a difference between the men and women that I worked with. So I think Chase was a pretty progressive bank. Um, it felt like there were sort of equal numbers of men and women in my Chase credit training
Right.
program class. Um, Certainly are the upper, echelon of managers and stuff were primarily men, but I never thought about it, to be
Good.
honest.
That's the way it should be. So
Yeah.
now skipping back to present day with you as a certified financial planner, tell Ty what that is.
I have often joked that I know doctor, lawyer, uh, police officer, professional football player.
Yeah, those
Other
are
jobs I'm not as familiar with.
yeah, that's about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So a certified financial planner or CFP is the highest certification among financial advisors and financial professionals serving individuals and families. And what that means is that we marry both investment management, so managing your financial, your retirement plans, your brokerage accounts, whatever, your investment portfolio with basically your long-term financial needs and goals because they're so intersected. You can't make informed investment decisions without knowing a client's financial needs and goals, whether they're short-term, medium-term, or long-term. And so that's why we marry the two, the investment management and the financial planning together in the work that we do at my firm.
Got it.
So, and to set the stage, I would love to talk about the different age groups. So, imagine if we were talking to a bunch of 20-year-olds, middle aged people, which I love the middle aged one because you created yourself. And a lot of this podcast, we talk about people can recreate themselves in middle age, but then get into the retirement age.
Yeah.
So, with young people, first of all, do you have many young clients like in that age group? Uh, I would think maybe they're not reaching out to you yet. And what would you want them to know if they were listening?
Yeah. So it's a great question and it's so important, right, to tailor a discussion to a particular person's stage in life, right? Um, and yes, I do have clients in their 20s and 30s. Most of them are the children or grandchildren
Right.
of our current clients. So we take a multi-generational approach when when we advise our clients and manage those relationships. So it's because their goals include their kids and their grandkids most
Sure.
times.
Yes, makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. So I do have a few tips, sort of for each age group. I wanted to start though, even more fundamentally,
Okay.
and this is, I speak from life experience because this is something my mother taught me and that I also taught my girls from a young age. So I'll call this like financial literacy 101, right?
Ty, take
What
notes.
my mother taught me was that there are three things that you do with money: you spend it, you save it, and you give it away.
Pretty easy.
Pretty easy, right?
Mhm.
Within each of those three kind of principles, you can really delve into important topics, right? So let's start with spending it. Spending brings in, the topics of budgeting, living within your means, um, you know, building credit, things like that. Really important topics at all ages. The second principle, saving it. That's where we talk about savings and investments and how you build long-term wealth through, investing and matching your investments to your, as I said before, short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals. And by way of example, a short-term goal could be, you want to save for a trip or, you know, a car. A medium-term goal might be for a young person saving for grad school. And then a long-term goal, of course, is, saving for a down payment on a home, etc. So you want to match those investments to those goals. And then the third pillar, giving it away. We're all charitable in our own ways, but it's such an important um, principle, I think, for everyone to embrace. We're all, blessed in so many ways, and so you want to give back, and charitable giving is an important way to give back, whether that's, you know, to your church, to your school, to a cause you believe in. The the amount means less than the consistency.
Okay.
So,
And
No,
I also
those
think
that's
I love the charitable giving conversation, but also at that age, you can give your time, or your work. So
right.
don't feel guilty if you don't have as much money at that age
right,
to give
right,
to a charity.
right,
But no,
right,
I think Gay's right. I mean, it's the action, it's the part of community, it's supporting something that you believe in, whatever that is, if it's your alma mater or a cause you believe in. So yeah, totally agree.
right. So I wanted to start with those 3 principles
Yeah,
because I
no,
think
those
Okay,
are
those
that's
solid.
great. Yeah.
Yep.
yeah, yeah. So then looking at, sort of the broader picture of financial planning at different stages of life, um, you talked about in your 20s, that is what, um, it really allows you to lay the foundation of good financial habits, because that's the decade in your 20s, believe it or not, gives you the longest runway for building wealth over time. Even though most 20-year-olds don't think that way, that's the reality. And it's tied to what's called compounding growth. Warren Buffett, perhaps the greatest investor of all times, calls compounding growth the eighth wonder of the world. And it is,
Mhm.
when you think about it.
Absolutely.
Because if you start saving $10 a month or $100 a month in your 20s, the compounding growth of that is phenomenal, is in the multi-millions by the time you're in your 50s and 60s. So it really is the best time to start saving and investing, even in small amounts, right? So how do you do that? Most 20 somethings, my girls included, are barely living on what they make, right?
Mhm.
But um if they work for an employer that offers uh a matching 401k retirement program, they need to participate,
Absolutely.
at least in the amount that allows them the full employee match. They can do more if they can, most of them can't, but at the very least, they should elect for the amount to be taken out of their paycheck. They won't even know
Right.
it's gone
Out of
because
sight,
it
out of
never
mind.
came
Yep.
out of sight. It's pre-tax income. It's before, it's going away, before they even see it. So that is probably the best way for 20 somethings to save long term.
So to interject, I do want to have a message that is something I've been worried about.
I've been worried about this message is what I'm
I
worried
know, but I
about.
think I think it's relevant, and it has to do with spending. And granted, I have no experience in this because I had no money in my 20s because I was in residency and fellowship. But I think about the online betting that kids in their 20s are doing, sports betting, which is just a little bit of a hobby. But imagine if instead of putting that money that your friends are betting on sports into an investment, like bet on yourself. Like that is going to pay way more than if the Ravens or the Commanders win this weekend. And it's a perfect thing of money where it's not really building you a community. It's not really putting you out there. It's not building a business, but it's that little bit of money that you could just say, "Hey, I'm not going to get involved in this thing that's becoming an epidemic problem." and you could actually use that money and be in a fantasy football league where you're not spending any money, but the punishment is still enough to keep you interested. Matt, is that appropriate? Is that okay?
And that's One to Grow On by Dr.
Yes.
House.
Okay. And
Yep.
back to
No.
Gay.
Yeah. I have no comment on that because I have no experience
Yeah.
with online betting, but you're absolutely right.
I'm
It
hearing
is
so much
it's
of it,
they
and
might
every
as well
time I
just
hear it,
burn
Yep.
their cash
Yep.
because
yeah.
it's a
Well,
high risk, low return, you know,
yep. And
prospect. They're
so
much better off
we just lost
putting
half
it
the
in.
dudes in the 18 to 20-year-old demo. Thanks, Ty.
Yeah,
No.
yeah,
But you're not
yeah.
wrong.
Yeah. Okay. Back to
But
Gay.
but you do bring up a good point, Ty, and you mentioned this before of the idea of sort of instant gratification versus delayed gratification. I think the 20s is the time when our kids learn that,
Mhm.
some the hard way, some the easy way, right? But it's a time when they realize, hopefully, that they don't need everything they think they need in that moment.
Right.
You know, it's worth it to wait, to save for, um, uh, versus just an instantaneous purchase. And that's part of the budgeting discipline, realizing what are, um, you know, non-discretionary expenses. They got to pay their rent every month. They got to buy their food. They got to pay their gym bill, their credit card bill versus discretionary, the needs versus the wants. And those discretionary expenses, they may be able to afford them in that moment and get that instant gratification, but more times than not, if they wait, they might realize, I don't really need that, or that's something that I'm gonna save for the next 6 months for, depending on what it is. So I do think that's a really important life lesson that they're gonna learn a little bit by default, or by mistake, what they really need and what they can defer.
Yeah, it's called
Okay.
adulting, I think is what they call it.
It's called adulting.
And
Exactly.
I tell you, I've been there, and I'm a great justifier. When I was in my 20s, I was living in New York, and I had an obsession with tie, not that tie, but neckties. All right, I was obsessed with tie house also, but neckties mostly. And I was like, what am I doing? I'm like, I don't need a new tie for every day of the month. But you
Right,
learn the
right.
hard way.
You do, and everybody does, and that's fine.
Yep. So now you got through your 20s. So
Yeah, so
are you
let's move
proponent
on
of budgeting,
into.
or you're telling kids to budget right at as soon as you can, figure out a budget?
Yeah, yeah. So I think in their 20s they need to learn the principles of budgeting, again, categorizing needs versus wants,
Yep.
um, um, taking full advantage of employer matches in 401k plans
Yeah.
if their employer offers that. Um,
And these are the basic
Building
fundamentals that'll
credit.
carry you through the rest of your life. So
Exactly.
yeah, the earlier you can start
Start now.
implementing, the better. Yep.
Start now. Start now. Um, Starting to build credit, right? So responsibly starting to use credit cards. There are a lot of different views about when, you know, young people should start building credit. I'll never forget dropping my daughter Nina off at college, and in front of the student bookstore, there were all these local banks in Ithaca, you know, offering student credit cards, student, high whatever bank accounts, whatever. Don't do it. Do not do it. College students don't need a credit card because they don't have the income to pay it off. So mom
Right.
and dad, we're paying it off anyway. So it doesn't build any discipline in them, in their spending habits to, to understand what they're putting on a credit card and being able to pay it off every month.
Right.
Don't do it. Don't do it. They When they are gainfully employed, that is when they should go into a bank, apply for a credit card in their name, and start building their own credit and following the discipline of of knowing what they're putting on their credit card and paying it off every month.
Absolutely.
So,
Yep.
other people feel differently, that's fine, but that's my
Yeah,
opinion.
and they're an adult
Um,
at 18, so they can get a credit card, so as a parent, you need to explain to them it's not just a
I said,
yeah,
"No way,
yeah, you
Right.
no
just have to
way,
explain it to them. 'Em, don't do it.
no way."
Yep. Yep.
Use a debit card instead.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yep.
yep.
Yeah, yeah. Alright, let's move on,
Okay,
um, to the 30s and 40s. I sort of group these a little bit. This is a stage when, um, many people can accelerate wealth building, um, primarily for a lot of us through purchasing a home and the equity that gets built through home ownership. We've all been incredibly fortunate in that way, I know. Um, but it's also the time when in the 30s and 40s when you need to balance that with a lot of big expenses that are
mhm,
coming down the pike, right? Um, kids, education, college savings, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a tricky that's a tricky time, but again, um, it involves just a lot of good planning, right?
yeah,
Um, so I'll start with planning for education expenses. I'm a huge proponent of 529 college savings plans. And in fact, you can start these earlier if you want. Um, but they provide uh, tax deferred growth and then tax free withdrawals for qualified education expenses. And not just for college. Now a lot of states allow for up to $10,000 to be used for K through 12 private education. So they're an incredibly tax efficient way to save for education. So I'm a huge proponent of starting 529 savings plans for your kids as soon as you can.
and now, do you have to have a plan for each kid, or can you have one plan for all your kids? So say you put the money in and you get a kid who gets a scholarship or something, or a partial
Right. Right.
scholarship, what happens
Right.
there? Can you apply it to the next
They're
kid?
Yeah, they're incredibly flexible too. So typically you would, because they're your accounts, so they're your asset with then a designated beneficiary. So typically you would start one for each child as the beneficiaries of those accounts. But you're exactly right. Kid A may get a scholarship, kid B, you know, may never go to college, whatever. You can always change that beneficiary designation for that account and change it to a different kid or a grandkid. So they're
Oh,
very
really?
flexible. Yeah.
Okay. You can pass
So,
it on to
Ty, did you
grandkids.
run out of money for Roddy? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, no. I'm not the
I'll tell
CFO
you,
of
I
our
spent
household. No.
every last dime
Uh-huh.
in my girls' 529 plans, every last dime.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And
Um,
you're doing that while you're building a house. And the one thing I want you to comment on is I had an attending when I was in residency who would lecture us all the time. Do not become house poor. He was
yeah,
basically like, don't get done and be like, I have this job title, so my house has to look like this because you'll make yourself miserable if you're in too much house. And I'll never forget him saying that.
absolutely. Absolutely. Neighborhood envy or neighbor envy is a terrible thing. It's a terrible trap. Um, but it's hard, right? It's hard for a lot of people to manage. And it's not just how big is your house, but how many fancy vacations do you go on? What private schools do your kids go to? It can snowball in so many different ways. Um, and it comes back to living within your means.
Right.
Yeah.
That very
Yeah.
basic first principle of how do you spend your money? You live within your means.
Yeah, and parents who are less stressed are gonna probably be more enjoyable to be around than the parents who take you to Disney World every year.
Yeah. 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 A few other things in your 30s and 40s. Obviously, if you can, while you're saving for college, while you're paying for private school, you know, by all means, increase your retirement contributions. expand other kinds of savings. Think about, Roth IRAs. There are lots of different financial vehicles you can think about. So with those extra pennies at the end of the month, you know,
Put them
put
somewhere.
put
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
somewhere
Yeah.
to good use. Um, this is also the time when you need to think about um, protecting yourself and your family, right? And insurance is the I'm not an insurance agent, so I'm not selling anything here, but um, the 30s and 40s is typically when people look at insurance products, life insurance being the most uh, common. I am a proponent of very basic term life insurance. There's so many other, you know, hybrid insurance products that are sort of quasi investment products. No, have your investment money here and then your insurance protection money there. You don't need to complicate them. Um, so term life insurance, disability insurance, all of the what I call the income protection products, so that um, if 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 you die or become disabled, you want insurance to come in and replace your income. That's really the sole purpose and the simplest purpose of good insurance.
Everything you said so far is keep it simple, right?
Keep it
Live within
simple.
your means, have insurance there to come in and do what it's do. When you start getting hybrids and these exotic financial products, that's when people get burned, or if you don't understand it, it's probably not a good
And you
fit.
and you won't understand it. I
Right.
don't understand half of them.
Right.
I should have mentioned this earlier because it's true at all stages of life, but um, create an emergency fund. The rule of thumb is that we should all have 6 to 12 months worth of living expenses in available cash. So that means, a treasury bill, a CD, a money market fund, something like that. Easily accessible cash. So that if you do lose your job, become disabled, whatever, that's easily accessible cash for a period of time.
And, in my work, I actually talk to people about disability all the time. And sometimes I'm the one doing the disability ratings and things like that. And that 6 months is huge because sometimes it takes a while to work it out, especially if lawyers are involved and those kind of things. That happens, especially if you're hurt at work. But the other thing I would comment on is if you have a physical job, and a lot of physical jobs make a lot of money, but you might need to be aware that your body, either genetically or for whatever reason, might not make it to 65 being able to do that kind of work. So if you're making good money while you're physically strong, you better be putting money away. You better have a good disability policy in case your body doesn't take it that long. And then our big theme is that you can't just show up and work every day if you're not putting in the physical work to keep your body in shape. So if you have a physical job, you need to consider yourself like a professional athlete where they're working on their bodies all the time.
Yep.
And I see it all the time with people with amazing jobs. And if they can hold on till 65, they're going to be fine, but they don't hold on to 65. And all of a sudden at 57, their financials totally change.
Right. Right. Great point. All right.
Matt
Now
just thinks
let's
it's an
move in.
average point,
It was.
but
I didn't think it was great. I
Matt's
just thought it
keeping
was a point.
score.
Yeah, it was a decent point. It wasn't
Yeah.
All right. Now let's move into our 50s and 60s. Not that any of us know anything about that. So this is the stage when
Matt's
you
bald,
really
so he's getting close.
I
Okay, you
shaved
and
my
I are
head.
fine, but have you looked over there?
I do this on purpose.
Okay.
I do some, and you're in your
it's,
late
it's
50s.
I know.
yeah, I mean, I pay good money for this. So
Okay.
You got to
anyway,
get your guy.
Yeah.
I know you'll edit that out, right?
Maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so your 50s and 60s, this is when hopefully you have maximized your wealth or are in the final stages of maximizing your wealth. And now it's about preserving it, right? So this is when I want to caveat before I get into the pointers here. the reality is for our generation, most of us will work well into our 60s. I you know, I see it every day, and I just think, that dream of our parents' generation of retiring at 60 and playing golf every day, there are very few people that will do that anymore. They can do that anymore, right? As you pointed out, Ty, a lot of our generation and subsequent generations, have had children later. So you're parenting later in life. You have a lot of these expenses later in life. And the reality is, hopefully all of us are going to live a lot longer. So, um, so either being able to or wanting to work later in life or needing to is a reality
Yeah.
for our generation,
Absolutely.
And it's beautiful
right?
if you have a job that you want to do. So, I mean, I know
Right,
plenty of people who could stop working, but they love their job. But it's
right.
also nice if you did the financial work in middle age that if you don't love your job, you can pivot to something that maybe you do love that maybe doesn't pay quite as much, or even you
Of
can
course,
take a risk on something that doesn't pay quite as much, but could potentially pay even more. You never know.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Emotionally, physically, mentally. Yep.
And I've been around
Yeah,
a lot of people who are like, I'm going to be retired by the time I'm 50. And then they're like, what are they going to do? So it's like,
right.
what are you going to do all day? If you play golf every day, your body's going to fall apart.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Start a podcast.
So
yeah.
so I think that is sort of the reality that a lot of us, in our 50s and 60s now, you know, are facing by choice or not. So what does that mean? That means if you're still working, you can maximize and dial up, right? Your 401k contributions. There are things called catch-up contributions. So that even, if you didn't maximize your contributions to your 401k early in your career, you can catch up through these catch-up contributions in your 50s and 60s. And it can make up a lot of ground for a lot of people who started
Okay.
saving late. So that's great. Um, You can also, I think I mentioned this before, consider, other savings vehicles. Roth IRAs are great if you qualify. They're very flexible. These are funded with after-tax dollars as opposed to pre-tax dollars in your 401k or other IRA, individual retirement account. So a Roth you fund with after-tax dollars. Um, uh, but what that means is your withdrawals in retirement are tax-free, as opposed assuming they meet certain requirements, but as opposed to the money you've been putting away in your IRA or your 401k, you have to remember those dollars have never been taxed. So when you retire after 59 and a half or as late as 72, and you start drawing those funds, those dollars are taxed as ordinary income because Uncle Sam is saying, now I want
Yeah.
my
Right.
piece.
Yeah.
So it's as simple as that. So a Roth gives you kind of a different tax balance, if you will, of dollars in retirement. So that's something you can consider. You also need to, start thinking about your estate plan. Um, how and to whom do you want to leave your wealth? Um, and that's a whole nother topic. But there are a lot of interesting things to think about and consider. Not the least of which, all of us know, is you know planning to pass on a family home to the next generation, which is a really difficult thing and requires a lot of planning, a lot of thought. There may be siblings that want, the vacation house and others that don't, some that can afford it, others that don't. Um, there are different vehicles you can use. I've done a whole talk on actually passing on a Sherwood cottage to the next generation. Um,
Okay.
and it's fascinating, and there are lots of different ways to think about it.
And I think that's also an interesting topic because for people who might be living longer, that means if they wait until they die, and I think a lot of us want to pass off things to our kids, but if you wait till you die, then your kid might be a senior citizen, if you're lucky, so you're passing off to a senior citizen. So does that raise, I imagine that's happening to more people. Where they're like, I don't need to give it to my 65-year-old kid or my 70-year-old kid. Is there any thought of like trying to give it to them when they could help pay for they could help their kids pay for college for their kids or school for their kids or get into a better school district with better public schools? Is there any trend to start giving away money earlier when your kids are in the thick of it?
Oh, of course, of
Yeah.
course. I mean, you can give $19,000 every year per person. So you and your wife can give $19,000 either in cash, stock, partial, interest in a home, whatever, vehicle, every single year to every single one of your kids and their spouses and their kids.
So you're
So,
saying $38,000 to my 4 kids plus my daughter-in-law plus my son-in-law plus whatever kids they have?
yes.
Yeah.
Matt, we need this podcast to get going.
I thought you monetized us. Did you hit the monetize button yet?
I thought I did.
Oh
I'm
god.
confused. We'll talk about that off the
All
air.
right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are lots of other gifting strategies too, that go beyond just that 19,000 is what's called the gift
Yes.
tax exclusion amount, and it increases every year. So that is the amount that you can gift any person every year without any tax, and, within that federal gift tax exclusion.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But there, as I said, there are lots of other ways to gift, and back to sort of the passing on of a family home, because you got to give a lot of $19,000 a year to reach the value of a lot of people's vacation homes, right?
Yeah.
For a lot of years. But there's something, there are trusts, there are what are called limited liability corporations, LLCs. A lot of people are using LLCs. They put the house ownership in an LLC, and then they divvy out shares to their kids, with the parents keeping the majority. I've done that with my house, and it's very flexible. It's very easy. You can gift those exchange those shares, and it's an exchange of personal property instead of real property. So, for instance, it doesn't, when the house finally does pass to the next generation, it doesn't affect title, mortgage, taxes, anything. It's just a gift of shares, a transfer of shares. So again, that's a whole nother topic,
Right.
but it's an important one for families that have legacy homes that they want to keep in their families.
When you're talking about this stuff, do you ever tell people like meet with somebody when you have no money at the very beginning in your 20s so at least you understand these concepts going out on through life? And do they offer those services for somebody who may not have anything to invest but they know that someday they will, and like let's capture them? Is that a thing out there?
There's so many ways to educate people on financial literacy, their courses, I'm sure there are other podcasts. Um, but I always got my best advice
Uh,
from my parents, and I'm trying to pass that on to my girls too.
okay.
I think you've given everybody in English a very basic plan through those 3 stages that we talked about, and I think it's, like you said, you gotta know who you get your advice from, make sure you can trust them, or that they've done the homework that you're getting the knowledge from, but you've also kept it real basic and real simple, just and I think that's the key. You wanna keep it real simple.
Well, and Matt and I talked about this briefly in the before we got on in the introduction, is that you also learn from the mistakes that other people made. So, as a doctor in orthopedics, in the Mercedes 80s, some of those guys were making a lot of money, and that's what we call it, the Mercedes 80s. And the residents who are now in their late 20s, early 30s still talk about those doctors who they were making a lot of money and then the money wasn't the same going on. And a lot of them wasted all their money and others invested it and lived frugally and were able to live off that money forever. And so you see the mistakes that some of these other doctors made and you learn from it. So I feel like the residents that are coming out now are way more financially savvy. And I feel like my generation's more financially savvy because we learned from that generation who bought too much house, too much boat, and even maybe just gave their whole practice to a manager and said, "I'll do the medicine part and you do the managing part," and never looked at the books and got burned. And in the intro, we were talking about Billy Joel's recent documentary where it talked about his manager took all of his money, and it's like you got to watch your money, you got to pay attention, you got to work with
You do,
somebody.
you exactly, exactly. You need to be engaged, you need to be educated, all of us do, right?
Right.
Um, in your financial affairs, and it's, a lot of people are scared by it,
Sure.
particularly women, and I will tell you, I have a particular passion about helping women engage in their and take control of their financial futures, um and when you work with someone who's, through a process like that, and then they get it, right? They get it, and they become engaged, and they know they can, um, make good financial decisions. It is so empowering. It is such a beautiful thing to see, because like, the light goes off, and they're like, I get it, and I can do it, and I
Yeah.
can manage my money, and I can and I can, provide for my family and, gift to my kids and grandkids, and it is a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah. And the
That's
financial health correlates with the mental health. Like,
sure.
if you're stressed all the time, it's
Yeah.
going to affect your mental health.
Oh my gosh, totally.
Well, this has been great. This has been really educational. Your passion is obvious. And I think your knowledge is going to help a lot of people out there as well. So thanks for spending some time with us and sharing your knowledge with us.
Yeah, that was
Thank
awesome.
you.
Yeah.